my sound.
What's up, everyone? How's everybody doing? I'm going to be sharing all my stuff to social media. Give me a minute, guys. Hope everyone's doing well. Our week 7 preview show. We got
Let's
playoffs.
rock.
Yeah, we got playoffs coming, dude.
Playoffs, dudes. This is the best time of the year.
It is. Yeah, it really is. And we'll give everyone a few moments to join. Obviously, don't worry. Anything missed, guys, we kind of have we're gonna have this posted on the channel, so don't worry about missing anything. I know I've gotten a few people have put sound bites of me. I've seen on a couple of videos, which is always fun.
Really?
Yeah, I just saw one today. Scarsdale. I was wrong on their pick against Suffern, so they had a little bit of fun. We'll see. You win this round. That's all I say.
Well, there was a game that I butchered pretty badly. I forgot which one it was.
It happens.
It was, it was Tappan Z. Yeah. Tappan Z. They got, was it? Who got destroyed?
No, they beat up on Portchester.
Yeah, they beat up on Portchester. That's what it was. Yeah, I can't. I forgot about that. That was definitely a rough one for me.
Yeah, it happens. But I want to welcome everyone. Appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. This is our Week 7 preview for Section 1 in the Hudson Valley Football League. Just like the previous weeks, again, if you're new here, make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. If you're returning, thank you guys again. Obviously, we talking football. We're going to be talking about the schedule on Slate, and then we're going to be looking at the standings. And we're in week 7, which means this is the final regular season game for AA, A, and B. C has one more regular season next week, including this one, and the Hudson Valley Football League as well. So a couple leagues still have to do one more regular season after this, but they're also vying for playoff positions. But this is some do or die moments for a bunch of schools trying to fight for playoff spots. And we also have some rivalry games this week too. So a lot of interesting stuff going on. Also, guys, if you want to put any questions in the chat, you can do that as well. If the question is going to be, hey, who do you have for this game? We'll pick it at that moment. But any other questions you guys can throw in there. And obviously want to give a shout out to our Patreon community, we appreciate all our supporters, but our Patreon community who helps donate to our cause, they really are the lifeblood for our organization. So just want to give a shout out to them like we always do. But Mars, let's dive into it. Start off with the schedule on Slate. And we'll go AA, B, C, D in the Hudson Valley Football League. When we do the game picks, I think last week we did the big schools first, so we'll do the smaller ones first this time around. But let's talk AA schedule. We got North Rockland at Carmel. These games are on Friday. Yonkers Forest at Mamaroneck. Scarsdale at Mount Vernon. John Jay's Fishkill at RCK, which is a big rivalry game. Arlington at Suffern. Ossining at White Plains. And then on Saturday, you have New Rochelle at Yonkers Brave. Going over to A, on Friday, we have Clarkstown South at Clarkstown North in their big annual rivalry. Eastchester at Greeley. Brewster at Mayapack. Harrison at Pelham. And in my opinion, probably the game of the week in the entire section, which is Somers at Yorktown, is a rivalry game as well. That's on Friday. And then on Saturday, you have Fox Lane at John Jay Cross River. Going down to B on Friday, we have Henhut at Edgemont. Byram Hills at Lakeland. Pleasantville at Nyack. Rhinebeck at Putt Valley. Keep an eye on that game. That game, to me, is going to be a big one. We'll talk about that. And on Saturday, you have Ardsley at Briarcliff Hamilton Football Program. Irvington at Hastings. Pearl River at Nanuet in their big rivalry game. Crow and Harmon at Peekskill. And Rye at Sleepy Hollow. And then Crow and Harmon Peekskill is kind of a crossover between the B and Hudson Valley Football League. When we get to the C and D schools, we have on Friday, Bronxville at Valhalla. On Saturday, Haldane at Westlake. And Tuckahoe at Woodlands. And then in the Hudson Valley Football League on Friday, we have Tappan Zee at Spring Valley, which is another interesting game. We have Ramapo at Walter Panis and Poughkeepsie at Portchester on Saturday. So those are the schedule, guys. Next, I want to kind of bring up the standings, but I do see, and again, appreciate you guys throwing in questions. I do see a question here. The Pioneer system is a joke. Some of the teams are playing 7 league games and some are only playing 6. Makes no sense. The way they solved for the teams only playing 6 is even more ridiculous. And I got to say, over the years, the Pioneer system is not a new system. It has been a system that has been used in the past, which I have never been a fan of. It kind of takes into a lot of consideration preseason, preseason buzz, strength of schedule. Some of the things I understand, but the smaller schools tend to be the ones that get hurt the most out of it in the Pioneer system, right? So that's the unfortunate part. You can only control what you can control, which is winning and losing football games. But as an overall opinion on the Pioneer system, I don't love it. B, because they have 17 schools, it does make it difficult because you have kind of a large range of big schools and small schools. How do you kind of, map it out that way? And like Mike Schneider said, some teams had 7 league games, others had 6, right? So it's not an easy situation, but I'm not a huge fan of the Pioneer system. It's been used in the past. Mars, any quick thoughts on the Pioneer system?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the biggest thing that I felt like that you could have done was almost just re-rank everybody on 2 separate divisions and then just have everyone play everyone in the division. Then you take the top 4 of each side or something along those lines. Something along those lines and just have playoffs set that way. But yeah, I understand the complication when it comes to the size differential between all the programs and B at this moment. And I feel like that's kind of the reasoning why. And granted, there's always you could always pick apart something like from the Pioneer system. You could always say you could have done it this way and that way. Like, I agree. There's always issues you can point out. I think that was what the mindset was. But yeah. I agree. I feel like there is some issues that they could be talking about, like, especially how can you fix this going forward, especially how class is going to look next year, how they're going to go into that. I mean, that's going to be a whole nother debate and debacle. So we'll see what's going on next year.
Yeah, and even if they did kind of the big schools, small schools, and maybe do a 5-3 playoff thing where 5 teams come from the big side, 3 come from the small side, or 6-2 or something like that. There's multiple different ways, but it's not an easy one. But appreciate the question. And now, before I'm going to go into the overall ranking, since we're talking about the Pioneer system, we'll jump in to the different standings. I do want to give a shout out to the last week's Team of the Week, Mars. It was a tie. We have Mamaroneck with their huge victory against John Jay, and Fox Lane with their upset victory, keeping their season alive against Mayapack. I don't have Fox Lane gear, so unfortunately I can't rock anything, but I am rocking some Mamaroneck gear. And so give a shout out to them. And now let's talk about the standings. And the first thing, we'll start again with the big leagues. And when we go into, again, 2 different leagues, in AA and A, it's going to be the top 4 teams on each side playing the opposite end. So 1A is going to play 4B, 2A versus 3B, 1B versus 4A, et cetera, right? So, and that's the same for A as well. B, the top 8 teams go, like we talked about with the Pioneer system. Shout out to Mr. Treehee, Ryanek. So Ryaneck's obviously representing in the chat. Appreciate you for tuning in. Let's start with AA. In League A, we have Arlington sitting atop at 5-0, and Suffern is right behind them at 4-1 in league play. That's the important thing. Even though Arlington's 7-0, Suffern's 4-1, 1 game behind. They play each other for the league title this week. We have Scarsdale, Nourishell, both at 3-2 in league play, followed up by Mount Vernon, Ketchum, and Yonkers Brave. So again, still vying for that who's seated where. Mount Vernon is still technically in it. Nourishell and Scarsdale also battling it out for the different spots. On the other side, things get very interesting, Mars. I mean, we have Carmel, who's already won the league title. They're locked in at the number 1 spot. We have John James Fishkill, who's 4-2. They're done with league play. They're playing a non-league game this week. North Rockland and Mamaroneck are sitting at 3-2. Now, North Rockland defeated Mamaroneck. Mamaroneck defeated John Jay. But right behind them is Ossining at 2-3 in league play. And they defeated North Rockland, if you remember, a couple weeks back. So this thing could get very interesting, and I'll talk about the different scenarios, but Ossining also has a chance to get into the playoffs, sneak in and knocking a team like North Rockland out of it. So that's something to keep in mind. We'll talk about the scenarios. When we go to A, there's the North League and the South League. And in the North League, Yorktown and Somers, both 4-0 in league play, Mars, sitting up the top, playing each other for the league title. The loser of that game would probably be the second. Yeah, it will be the second seed. And then behind that, listen to this. 3-4, we have Mayapack, Fox Lane, Brewster, and John Jay Cross River all tied at 1-3 in league play, which is pretty wild thinking about it. And these teams all beat each other, right? So Fox Lane beat Mayapack. Mayapack beat John Jay. John Jay beat Brewster. Brewster beat Fox Lane. So this is going down to the wire. And there's a lot of do or die situations again, which we'll talk about as well. But those two slots are wide open. And then on the other side, Harrison's locked up the league title, sitting at the number 1 spot. Eastchester has locked up the second slot at 3-1. And then you have Clarkstown South, who's sitting at 2-2. Now, they have clinched a playoff spot, but we don't know if they're 3 or 4. And then after that, Marsh, you have Greeley, Pelham, and North all locked at 1-3. So again, we're getting to a situation on who is going to take that final spot. Thoughts, Mars, on AA and A?
I mean, when it comes to AA, I feel like the fact you're getting with that Scarsdale and Nero, like they are always been competitive, especially in these recent years. So I'm waiting to see about how that's going to be. But I feel like the Suffern Arlington game is going to be a very interesting one for sure. Obviously, they're going to fight for that league title. But on the A side, I mean, the fact that you have that, was it Division A that has that 4-way, basically.
North. Yeah, North.
North Division has that 4-way battle for third
tie
and fourth.
For the last two spots.
I mean, we all know that Fox Lane took mine and your words and put it on their lockers. We picked against them last week. So, I mean, they're all vying for that playoff spot. I mean, it's going to be a showdown this week to find out who's going to be in the last two. So that's definitely going to be interesting.
Yeah. Finally, let's go to B. And then this has kind of been the talk is about the Pioneer system. So what the current rankings are right now, Pleasantville sitting at number 1, Rye sitting at 2, Ardsley at 3, Pearl River at 4, Nanuet at 5, and Lakeland at 6. And kind of just looking at the calculations here and the kind of overall numbers, I think those 6 have been locked in as clinching a playoff spot. Now, it doesn't necessarily, the numbers can change on what seeding they are, but I think all 6 of those teams have clinched a playoff spot, Mars. The question is 7 and 8. And right now, sitting at 7 is Byram Hills. Sitting at number 8 is Nyack. And then 9 and 10 has the best opportunity to make the playoffs, which is Rhinebeck and Putnam Valley. And I do think the winner of that Rhinebeck-Putnam Valley game, Mars, is going to get in one of these spots, especially if both Byram and Nyack lose. So that's kind of like the win or go home type game right there. And I do think if Byram and Nyack lose this week, who are playing both tough opponents, the winner of that game, I think, slips into one of those last 2 spots. Mars, thoughts on, I think, Croton Harmon, I don't know if the number is going to match up, but any thoughts on B before I go into C and D?
No, I feel like the Pioneer system is going to be the most debated thing going forward. But I think overall, when you look at the teams that are kind of secure their spot, I mean, you look at the games of the week, like for B, they're all kind of like matching up exactly to see who's going to go where. I mean, I think that's really the most interesting part of this is that, yeah, even though a lot of them are going to be secured already, seeing where they land at the end is going to be really where we get to see, like, where the battle line is going to be drawn. I feel like it's going to be very interesting to see how all these teams match up at the very end.
Yeah. Finally, the C and D league, which is, again, pulling D because Haldane and Tucko both make it automatically. Right now, the seeding in C is Westlake, Dobbs Ferry, Valhalla, and Bronxville. And then Woodlands is following them. Top 4 go in after week 8. And then in the Hudson Valley Football League, we have Spring Valley and Tappan Zee, both locked with 5 league wins. They play this week. So they're locked in at 1. 3 is Peekskill. Then 4 is Portchester. 5 is Walter Panis. 6 is Poughkeepsie. And 7 is Ramapo. So, again, very interesting setup there. All right, guys, you ready for the game picks? Mars, you ready?
I'm ready to roll, man. Let's go.
All right, so how we're going to do it, guys, we're going to go through the Hudson Valley Football League first, followed up by C, D, B, A, and then double A. Don't worry about missing anything, guys. And like always, appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions, throw it in the chat. Let us know who's represented, who's watching here. So let's dive into Mars. One of the biggest games to me, Hudson Valley Football League. Tappan Zee 5-1 at Spring Valley, who is 5-0. Mars, this is a slugfest right here. Probably is going to clinch the #1 seed in the Hudson Valley Football League. And let's start, to me, with Tappan Zee. This is the #1 offense in points scored in the Hudson Valley Football League currently. And it's really led by a guy, Owen O'Hara, who's been really good for this team. But they do like to, spread the wealth around, if you want to call it. And their quarterback, Kilvellian, is another guy who's made some big plays for this offense. Now, going up against a very tough defense in Spring Valley brings a lot of pressure, Mars. So this offensive line is really going to have to be aware. But what has impressed me about Tappan Zee is the defense. The last 3 weeks, they've allowed a total of 6 points. They've also forced 3 turnovers last week. So, Tappan Zee is playing at a very high level. When you look at Spring Valley, this defense, Mars, has allowed 6 or less points each game this season. So this has been a dominant defense in the Hudson Valley Football League for Spring Valley. The question I have is offensively. They've only had 2 games out of the 5 where they scored over 20 points. So this is what the concern is. Sometimes you see Spring Valley very explosive. Sometimes their offense struggles to get going. But in this game, I'm going to go with Tappan Zee Mars to win on the road. I really like Spring Valley's defense. They bring a lot of pressure. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. But the offensive inconsistency is what makes me nervous about Spring Valley, and I think Tappan Zee is going to make enough big offensive plays. I'm going with Tappan Zee.
Now, see, last week I kind of screwed myself not picking Tappan Zee, and they kind of let us all hear it. They said, "Don't be sleeping on us." And how was Mars's pick on that game?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Spring Valley. I mean, I want to see Tappan Zee prove it again. The question is going to be the offensive line of Tappan Zee. Spring Valley is going to send a lot of heat. They've always done a very good job of getting some pressure up front. And I feel like Spring Valley is going to get some turnovers. It's going to get their offense in a more better position. And I think their offense is going to punch it in. I'm going to go with Spring Valley.
Let's go to the next game in Hudson Valley Football League. Ramapo is 1-5 at Walter Panis, who's 1-5. And let's talk about Ramapo offensively. Again, another inconsistency. That's the word I would use. 1 game scoring over 20 points. And turnovers really killed them last week. And really, it's hurt them all season. They had 4 turnovers last week, Mars. But defensively, 2 of the last 3 weeks, they've allowed less than 10 points. So the defense can really get after it. Ramapo's got a lot of speed. But when you look at Panis, Mars, it was good to see Carlucci back. He is a dynamic football player. And boy, does he spark the offense for Walter Panis. Even when he's not getting the ball. He had a tremendous game last week. He changes the dynamic. Nick Tetro was able to score 4 touchdowns. A lot of big plays that Carlucci bring them down the field, and then the team's bailing out to stop him. It opens things up for other guys. The problem, again, also with Panis defensively, Mars, 5 games this year, they've allowed more than 21 points. So you have a defense that's been struggling against an offense that's been struggling. Who do you bank on? I'm going to go with Walter Panis. I think Carlucci being back changes the dynamic of this team. They do need to be better defensively without question, but Ramapo has struggled turning the ball over, and I'm going to go with Walter Panis.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I feel like Carlucci is that X factor. He's the guy that's going to make all the big plays. I think he's going to have a game. I think he's going to really change the momentum for Panis. I think that behind him, you're really going to have really a lot of kind of explosive plays, and I feel like Carlucci is going to be a guy that really sets that tone. I'm going Walter Panis.
Next game, Hudson Valley Football League, Poughkeepsie 1-6 at Portchester, who's 2-4. And when I look at Poughkeepsie, Mars, they moved the ball pretty well last week. They were able to make some throws to the outside. Some guys making some big plays with their speed and space. But defensively, Mars, 27-plus points allowed 5 out of the 7 games. And that's kind of been the biggest concern for Poughkeepsie. At times, the defense plays well, and at times, the offense plays well, but it can't seem to both do it at the same time. When I look at Portchester, Mars, a couple weeks ago, the offense was rolling. But last week, 0 points, right? They really struggled to move the ball defensively. 38-plus points 3 out of the last 4 weeks. So Portchester, I think they have their last in points allowed in the Hudson Valley Football League. This one was a tough one for me. I like Portchester at home, does give them a boost, but I'm going to go with Poughkeepsie. I like the way the offense has played, especially last week. Defensively makes me a little concerned, but Portchester's defense has given up even bigger plays than Poughkeepsie. I'm going with Poughkeepsie.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Poughkeepsie. I feel like that is kind of the recipe of having some problems when your defense, like Poughkeepsie's defense might be struggling, but their offense has at least been consistent. But Portchester's defense have had probably more struggles than Poughkeepsie. And I feel like it's just whoever's going to have really the more of a momentum on their side. And I feel like obviously Poughkeepsie is going to be the team that goes that for me. I'm going to go with Poughkeepsie.
Let's go to the C games now. And Mr. Tree says Rhinebeck rolls with Mars. Well, we'll see when we get to that game. We'll talk about it. But appreciate you as watching.
Appreciate it.
Mars doesn't have a lot of fans, so he does appreciate the.
Oh yeah, I got the whole town of Rhinebeck behind me.
But let's talk about a C matchup. Bronxville 2-3 at Valhalla, who's 3-3. And when I look at Bronxville, Mars, huge bounce back game last week. Offensively, it's really predicated on the run. We've seen some big plays by guys like from Patterson, Lamato. In the last two games, Mars scoring 27 and 40. This offense has really started to generate after things have been a kind of a struggle. Play action opens up after that, but establishing the run is going to be really important for Bronxville in this game. Now, defensively, 3 games, they've allowed 12 or less points. And so, at times this defense has shown not just to be good, but very good. And it is all going to be predicated on slowing down Valhalla's rush attack with Maicon, McSherry, is going to be absolutely huge for them. But when I look at Valhalla offensively, only 209 yards of offense last week. It was a bit of a struggle, 199 of it on the ground. So again, running with the ball with Rob Foyset is the identity with the physicality of them up front against a bigger size Bronxville team. How's that going to work? But their quarterback O'Neal, they got to be better on third down. Mars 2 of 12 last week, which is an absolute killer for them. Defensively, this is a very strong unit. I mean, they only allowed last week in a loss 225 yards. So this is a strong defensive unit. They gave up some big plays they have to avoid this time around. This was a tough one. I think these are kind of even teams, but I'm going to go with Valhalla. They're at home. I think they're going to run the ball somewhat successfully. They do a much better job on third down being efficient. I'm going to go with Valhalla.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Bronxville. I feel like they have a big front. It's really going to be a battle between the Hogs up front. And I feel like Bronxville's defense has been very consistent. And I feel like they're going to kind of slow down the game in their favor. And when they make some turnovers or at least win the line of scrimmage, making it a lot more difficult for Valhalla to do what they want to do. And I feel like Bronxville's going to get the advantage of that. I'm going to go Bronxville.
Let's talk about a CD matchup. Mars Haldane 5-1 at Westlake, who's 5-0. And let's start with Haldane. Offensively, Mars 4 games of 21 plus points. But the last 2 games, they've scored 20 and 15. So the offense has kind of taken a little bit of a step back. And it all starts with running the ball with them. And they have a dynamic duo in Van Tassel and Gianchinta. Now, Van Tassel, weren't able to throw the ball very effectively last week. He was only 3 of 10. But he did have 2 touchdowns. Gianchinta, over 240 yards total the last 2 games and 3 touchdowns. So them using their legs and running the ball. And this offensive line is going to have their hands full with the speed of Westlake, who was tremendous last week. Defensively, listen, they only allowed, like I talked about in the previous game, 209 yards of offense total against Valhalla. And again, stopping Westlake's speed, especially on the outside, they have to slow down the run game, force Westlake to be more of a passing team. And it's going to start with guys like Stubblefield. He had a tremendous game last week, all over the field, making impact plays at over 10 tackles. Corliss, Stickle, these are all the guys who have made big plays on this defense, along with Gianchinta. Haldane's got its hands full with the speed of Westlake, but I really like this defensive unit. When I look at Westlake Mars offensively, it wasn't a strong offensive performance last week. We know about Callie, who is a big-time player for them running the ball, had a rushing touchdown last week, which was the only score Westlake had. Ari Cielo, which I'm terrible with names, but he's another running back who also had an impact last week. But they have multiple guys that they'll hand the ball off to. I mean, we've seen Zino, you've seen Castellano, you've seen the quarterback Pagan, getting the ball to different guys. But at the end of the day, giving it to Callie is going to be the big one, especially running downhill. They might have a size advantage against Haldane. Defensively, Mars, they were so good last week defensively. They only gave up 70 total yards against a Dobbs Ferry team that runs the ball very well. So if they can play with that kind of effort, stopping the run, they have a very good chance of winning this game. With all that said, Westlake at home, I got to take Westlake. Their defense played really good. I thought they were going to have some issues stopping the run against Dobbs Ferry. They did not. That similar effort against Haldane is going to have to be key. Forcing Haldane to be a passing team, although they have a very good quarterback, but Haldane is predicated on running the ball first. So if Westlake can stop that and force them to pass the ball, they might get some turnovers here. So I'm going to go with Westlake.
You see, this was a tough one for me. I feel like this is going to be a very close game all around because I feel like both defenses can really perform. And obviously both teams offensively are looking to do the same thing. They want to run the ball heavily. So I feel like I'm going to go with Haldane. I'm going to go with the upset. I think that Haldane is going to basically try to bring up the front. They're going to try to slow down, contain these all-star backs like Hallie to slow down this game in their favor. And if their front can own like the line of scrimmage, then I feel like they will be able to be successful and causing some turnovers to get their offense the ball. I'm going to go with Haldane.
All right. Josh, have you done Fox Lane? No, we are on the CD schools. Then we're going to go to B and then A and then double A. So don't worry about that. Make sure to stay with us. Let's go to the last C game, Mars, which is Tuckahoe at Woodlands. Tuckahoe's 3-2. Woodlands is 0-5. Let's talk about Tuckahoe, who was off last week. This is the number one team in points scored out of the C and D schools, Mars. They scored 30-plus points in 2 straight games. Colachico has been tremendous all season long. And I hope I said his name right because I keep screwing that up this year. But he has over 1,100 yards passing, Mars, 300 yards rushing, 19 touchdowns. He is probably up for one of the offensive players of the year out of the smaller schools. And they have 3 wide receivers with over 200 yards receiving at 4 touchdowns, Mars. So the pass attack is dynamic. They also use him a lot as a runner. But Benke, Snyder, Bryce, those are the big key targets for this offense throwing the ball. And now defensively, listen, they've allowed 21-plus points in 3 straight games, right? So this is not the dominant defensive performance that we normally see from Tuckahoe, but what they've done very well is they have forced 17 turnovers, Mars, this year. And you're going up against Woodlands that have allowed 2-plus 40-point-plus games the last 3 games, Mars. Slowing down this pass attack is going to be very tough for Woodlands. They really have to get after the quarterback. And defensively, if Tuckahoe can get a couple extra possessions turning the ball over, I think it's going to be a long day for Woodlands. I'm going to go with Tuckahoe here, Mars.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to go with Tuckahoe as well. I mean, it's pretty simple. I think their offense is loaded. They have a lot of guys that can make big plays. And when you have a defense that's really aggressive, that has been dominant, I feel like you have the recipe for success, an offense that can score on demand, and a defense that will slow the game down in their favor. So I'm going to go with Tuckahoe in this game.
All right, so that was the Hudson Valley Football League and the C&D schools. Now we're going to go to B, and again, appreciate you guys as always joining the show, listening in. Make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions, shoot it into the chat. Let us know who's represented here in the chat. We always appreciate you guys. Let's dive into the B games now, Mars. First one up, I want to talk about Hen Hud, 1-5 at Edgemont, who's 1-4. Both teams are out of the playoff picture, but both teams, again, even the teams that are not in the playoffs, Mars, there's so much that goes into this game, right? The seniors playing their last bit of games for the program. The young players having an opportunity to establish themselves heading into next year, right? So there's a lot of different things that you can get from these important games. So even teams out of the playoff picture, these are intriguing matchups. And let's start with Hen Hud. To me, these are one of the teams that I see has been improving as the season goes along. Offensively, the first 4 games, Mars, they couldn't score 20 points. But the last 2 games, 49 and 22, right? So you're seeing the offense starting to gel a little bit. Justin Parkes, Kyle Pesky, those are some big playmakers for them. Bound the quarterback. Defensively, they have to slow down the run of Edgemont. Edgemont is a scrappy team that runs the ball very well. And looking at Edgemont, they run with physicality. Not a huge team, but they run with physicality and guys like Saito and Larson. Defensively, though, they're last in B in points allowed. Edgemont is. So that's a big concern. Hen Hud's ability to run the ball with physicality, have a size advantage. I'm going to go with Hen Hud to win on the road here. Mars, what about you?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to also go with Hen Hud. I feel like they've been getting better as the weeks go on. They've always been a very aggressive team, but now it's going to be about putting everything together, scoring some points, being aggressive on defense, slowing down the run. I feel like they're going to kind of put all that together and win this game. I'm going to go with Hen Hud.
All right, let's go to a big matchup here. Byram Hills 2-4 at Lakeland, who's 4-3. Byram Hills currently sitting at the number 7 ranked, Mars, in B. So wins are going to be very important. It's also important on who you've lost to, but win can guarantee Byram Hills getting into the playoffs, right? So the big problem that they're having offensively is turnovers. They've had 2+ turnovers now in 2 straight games. They have to limit the turnovers in this game. Their quarterback, Accurso, is obviously a big play guy for them. With Weiler, Burfield, and Machucci running the ball, I think is going to be extremely important versus Lakeland. But Lakeland has some good size up front, so this offensive line is going to be tested. Defensively, I didn't think they played too bad, and I think this has been a defense that has at times had some real high moments, but they cannot turn the ball over and defensively have to limit the big play. And when I look at Lakeland, Mars, they're currently at the 6th rank Offensively, they're number 4 in points scored in B. Their quarterback Leonard had 5 touchdowns last week. Marcy was very good, and he was sensational. But their running back Paulo Castro, Mars, has now had a couple games where they're running the ball over 100 yards. And if they can mix that in with the quarterback throwing the ball, this offense continues to show it could be deadly. Anthony Frobrosi had a big game, making an impact on both offense and special teams. And then you have those receivers in Perry and Gallagher, who are a handful. Now, defensively, they forced 4 turnovers last week, and that's why I kind of brought up the turnover battle. Lakeland, if they can force some Byron Mills turnovers, which has had trouble these last few games, giving their offense a couple extra possessions, they have a good chance of winning this. DJ Brody has been a guy who's kind of been all over the field for Lakeland defensively. Listen, Byron Hill is going to be very desperate. They need a win here to guarantee a spot. I think Lakeland has gotten a spot, but Lakeland also wants to win to boost its kind of rankings here, right? So I'm going to go with Lakeland. I think they're going to win at home. I think they'll force a couple turnovers. Mars, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like I'm also going to go with Lakeland. I feel like their offense has been more complete. Like you said, I feel like they've been able to pass the ball all season long, but now developing the run game is going to really be a big deal for this offense. And the fact that defense is getting getting some turnovers, getting their offense back on the field. I feel like the more times you give this offense an ability to make a play, they're going to make a lot more plays than not. And I feel like that's why I'm going to go with Lakeland here.
Yeah, getting off to a fast start as well is another big one. So I've got another Big B matchup, Mars. Pleasantville 6-0 at Nyack, who is 3-3. Now let's talk about Pleasantville, Mars. They're playing at a very high level on both sides of the ball. They're number 1 ranked currently in B. They also have the number 1 offense in points scored, which before the season you might have been surprised to hear, but they're playing at a very high level in B. And their running back, Daniel Picard, obviously starts with him. He has over 700 yards rushing, over 300 yards receiving, so over the 1,000-yard mark total yards, and also 14 touchdowns. So to me, it really starts that way, and they're going up against a defense that has given up some big plays, especially in the running game. So look for a lot of heavy dose of Daniel Picard. But Nyack did also give up 4 passing touchdowns last week, so I'm interested to see how this pass attack is going to go after them with Aiden Picard and guys like Eric Coleman who can make some plays in this game. Defensively, Mars is the number 2 defense in points allowed. They have forced 16 turnovers so far this season. Nyack last week, the big things that hurt them, giving up big plays defensively, running the ball, and turnovers. That was another big thing as well. So this defense can really get after it. We know guys like Corrigan and Sadao stopping the run that Nyack does very well is going to be the number 1 priority. Preventing them from getting out on the edge. That's going to be a big thing that Pleasantville has to emphasize. They can force Nyack to throw the ball more than they want to. Can these defensive backs make some plays like Kudzinski or Dundee? I think they can. But when I look at Nyack, Mars, they're currently sitting at the number 8th ranked in B. Offensively, they have scored 20 plus points 5 out of 6 games. And the emphasis is definitely running the football. They have multiple backs who can get it. And if they can get out on the edge, that's where they can do a lot of damage. The question is offensive line handling the Pleasantville pressures, bringing their linebackers, and turnovers were a killer. They had 4 last week, like I mentioned earlier. Defensively, though, 30-plus points 2 out of the last 3 weeks. Nyack pull off the upset at home. It's going to be a tough environment for Pleasantville, but the defense giving up way too many points. I'm going to go with Pleasantville, Mars. What are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the kind of the weapons that Pleasantville have, I feel like it's very difficult to kind of contain everybody. I mean, you have Daniel Picard, obviously, and he's going to be a weapon within himself. But you have a lot of other guys like Coleman and McDermott and McPhee who've all kind of had some big plays over the last few weeks. And obviously, Aiden Picard has been playing better and better at quarterback. And you're seeing kind of this offense kind of explode. And it's really going to be based on the Hogs up front, and they have been playing very well all season as well. And I feel like the defense has always been consistent. I mean, obviously, the linebacker play between Horrigan and Sadao has been very good. The secondary has been very solid. The front has been disruptive, right? So I feel like you have a balancing attack between both this offense and defense has been very good. And Nyack needs to kind of really do what they do well and try to run the ball, win the line of scrimmage in order for them to do anything. And I feel like it's going to be a fight because both sides are really going to be heavy run teams in a way. And I feel like it's going to be a very interesting matchup to see.
All right, Mars, this is probably the game of the week, in my opinion, in the B class, and that is Rhinex 6-1 at Putnam Valley, who is 4-2. And to me, the winner here, I think, at the end of the day, especially based on some of the picks that we've had, I think the winner of this game gets in as the 8th seed, personally. Again, it's hard to calculate the numbers until all the results, but personally, that's what I think is going to happen. But let's start with Rhinebeck. They're currently ranked number 9, and they're a very good feel-good story, and they have won 6 straight games, and a lot of credit to the coaching staff, to the players, of turning this thing around. The last couple of years, Rhinebeck has struggled, and this has been a tremendous season for them. And offensively, we know about Merkel has kind of been the big play guy for them at the quarterback spot. Had another 3 passing touchdowns last week, and there's a couple of different guys who have made plays. We know Conaway, Byram, Klingman. The question is, for me, up front. And this offensive line has done a good job, but now they're going up against a very strong defensive front in Putnam Valley. So how is this offensive line going to handle some of the size and some of the explosiveness of the defensive lineman of Putnam Valley? Is going to be a key one. But, they got up early in the game last week, and who had to make plays for them to close the game was the defense, Mars. They've only allowed 12 points each of the last 3 games, so they are limiting big plays and forcing some turnovers. And it was a big one. They had a game-sealing INT last week. Evans had an INT. We know Schneider has also made some big plays for them in this defense, and it's a multitude of guys, not just one guy who stands out. There's a bunch of different guys who have made plays with them in key moments. Stopping the run is going to be so important for Rhinebeck. Because Putt Valley, that's a key part of their team. And now going to them, Putt Valley is ranked number 10 offensively. It's hit or miss. If they can run the ball, that's when you really start to see the explosiveness of this offense. Is when they can't, is when things are a struggle. I mean, 2 of the last 4 weeks, they have scored 6 points or less, right? But Meister last week, 154 or 152 yards running the ball. Pass attack has been too inconsistent. But boy, Mars, defensively, listen to this number. Putnam Valley, they are number 3 in points allowed in B. This is a strong defensive unit. 5 games, they've allowed 14 or less points. And this is also multiple guys. It starts in the front 7 with guys like Alex Jashaj and Caden Glenn, but Dober's another guy who makes a lot of big plays for this Putnam Valley defense. This is a defense that can really get after the quarterback, cause turnovers. I'm really looking forward to this Rhinebeck O-line versus Putt Valley D-line. This one was a hard one to pick, Mars. Really one tough one for me. And I know I'm going to hear it. It pains me to say it, but I think the Cinderella ends this week. I think Putt Valley's going to win this game at home, and they're going to punch their ticket into the playoffs, Mars. Let me hear it. Are you going to go against your community over there?
Well, firstly, I gotta say, when you look at both these teams, they're very well matched between both each other. Obviously, you gotta look at the way that Putt Valley's defense has been playing. Their front, they got some big boys up front, and they've been kind of causing a lot of issues for teams. That they've been difficult to push them around. But I'm also gonna say that Rhinebeck is, like you said before, that Cinderella team. Like they're those guys that have a lot of heart, and they've been fighting against a lot of teams that no one expect them to beat it. To beat, except for your boy Mars. And the point I gotta say is this offense has really been putting everything together. This offensive line has really been pushing people around. Merkel has been playing lights out, and he plays like he's not afraid. He's gonna really make some big plays for this, for the squad. But it's not just him; it's a lot of other guys that have been stepping up, and I feel like that is what has been kind of giving this team a lot of fire, right? And I feel like you said before, the matchup between the O line and D line between Rhinebeck and Putt Valley. That's going to be the matchup of the day. And, overall, when I think about what I'm feeling, I feel like the Cinderella story is not over. Cinderella story is only just begun. Rhinebeck I think is going to be my pick here. I think the offense needs to really step it up. The O-line is going to get challenged, and they're going to be the ones that have to set the tone. So I think Rhinebeck's going to win this game. I think they're going to keep this train rolling.
If this game was at Rhinebeck, I would agree with you. But being on the road, Putnam Valley, that's going to be a tough matchup. But we will see. Let's go to the next B matchup, Mars. Ardsley 5-1 at the Briarcliff Hamilton football program, who is 2-4. And starting with Ardsley, they're the number 3 ranked in B currently. And I'm looking to see Ardsley kind of bounce back. Offensively, when you look at this O-line, had a really tough game last week. definitely have to rebound this time around, use their size and physicality, and get back to running the ball. Their quarterback, Randy's had a tremendous season. They like to use him a lot, both at, running the ball has been the key thing, but also throwing it to guys like Chenard. But Silverman, Dulcine, they have multiple guys who can carry the ball for them, but they had 3 turnovers, and that's just not the way Ardsley normally plays. They felt a little bit, they got beat up. And so I'm interested to see this offense rebound defensively as well. Last week, they gave up 500 yards, over 500 yards, and they didn't give up a punt. But the games before that, they've allowed less than 10 points in 3 straight games. So I think the defense is going to come back down. Briarcliff Hamilton football program at times has had issues moving the football. So look for this defensive line to really get after them, cause some negative plays. When I look at Briarcliff Hamilton, I mentioned it, offensively, they're the 3rd worst in B in points scored. So the offense is going to have to find something against a very disruptive defensive line. But defensively, 4 out of the 5 weeks, they've allowed 14 or less. So that's kind of been the consistent. If they can keep this muddy, they can keep this an ugly game, keep things close. Maybe the offense can make a big plays. But unfortunately, I don't see it. I'm going to go with Ardsley here, Mars.
Yeah, I'm also going to agree. I feel like Ardsley is just, they've had a rough go. I mean, obviously a tough game, but I feel like they're going to kind of take a step back and realize that, hey, we're a very good team. And as we do the things that we do well, our offensive line plays consistently, and we don't have any turnovers, and our defense doesn't really lose that front or lose that contain. And I feel like they're going to be back to where they are normally, right? I feel like they've been a very good team up to last week. And, I feel like that's just been one of their worst games that they've played. And I feel like that's going to be the thing for them. Rebounding from it, I'm also going to go with Ardsley as well.
Yeah, I do see some. Putt Valley beat the same teams as Rhinebeck. It is true. I mean, they are kind of on the same side of the bracket. They have played the same teams. I think that's what makes this matchup even more intriguing, is you can see a lot of evenness here. Now, they're different style teams, but I do think when even teams, Mars, we've talked about it, sometimes I tend to go with the home team in those even matchups. Rhinebeck rolls with Mars. Yeah, I had a feeling that one's coming, but game of the week in B, yeah, tomorrow is in Putt Valley. I do think it is the game of the week for B, outside of one other game, which is going to be another really intriguing one, which we'll talk about. Let's continue, Mars. Let's talk about Irvington, who's 0-6, at Hastings, who's 1-5. Irvington trying to get their first win, and we've seen at times, Mars, that they can really move the ball. They've had, again, with Canton and other guys who have been explosive. But the problem I have with Irvington is defensively, they've allowed 30-plus points each game this year, and just too many big plays given up on the defensive side, too many mistakes. And when I look at Hastings, I know offensively they have struggled without question, but going up against an Irvington defense that has also struggled, maybe they can find some more consistency, even though their defense at that time had bright spots. I do think this is an even game. And with that, Mars, like I just said, I'm going to go with the home team. I think Hastings wins. Just Irvington, too many mistakes defensively, even though their offense has shown some good things, but I'm going to go with Hastings.
I'm going to go with Irvington for this one. I feel like Irvington, like you said before, has shown that they have the ability to move the ball, but it's just been their inconsistency and also the just constant mistakes that they've had on defense. But I think this is the game they kind of pull back the reins and say, we are going to be efficient and we are going to be consistent. And I think Irvington's going to win this game.
My other game of the weekend, B, Mars, is the big rivalry. Pearl River 5-1 at Nanuet, who's 4-2. This is the Little Brown Jug game. And these are two teams, both in the playoff spot, and the big rivalry here. So let's talk about Pearl River first. And this has kind of been one of the more, if you want to call them, surprise teams of B. They have played at a very high level. They're currently ranked number 4. And offensively, they have scored 30-plus points 3 out of the last 4 weeks. And it's also predicated on them is running the ball. And the big question when we talked about Pearl River was the offensive line. Can they continue to grow? And they have played at a pretty darn good level these last few weeks. You can't score 30-plus points if your O-line is poor. And it starts with running the ball. And a guy like Espinal has 5 touchdowns the last 2 games. The question I have is, again, if the offensive line and the rush attack isn't as potent against a tough Nanuet run defense, can they do enough in the passing game? And this is going to be the question about this O-line, about their quarterback Whalen throwing some of the weapons on the outside. Can they make enough plays? That's kind of the big question that I have in this one, because Nanuet, you can attack them towards the outside, right? They're tough up the middle, but out on the edge, at times you can get them. Defensively, Mars, you want to know who the number 1 defense in points allowed is? It's Pearl River, Mars. They're number 1 in points allowed in B. 4 straight games of 7 or less points. And this is, again, multiple guys who can make plays for you. It starts with Dagon McLaughlin in the secondary, but in this game, they really have to stop the run. Guys like Responti, Davin, they can slow down the Nanuet rush attack and force them into a passing team. I think they can force a couple turnovers here. And when I look at Nanuet, historically, Mars, this has been a tough rivalry for Pearl River. They're 18-3 versus Pearl River. They have won 6 straight. They're currently sitting at the number 5 slot offensively. This is where the inconsistency is. They're currently number 11 in points scored in B, and it's predicated on the scrappiness and physicality of this offensive line and the run game. And they have multiple guys they'll hand it off to. Duffy, Stemmerman, their quarterback Elise, who out of the play action. If they can get ahead of the chains and play action, they can throw and make some big plays to guys like Jack O'Sullivan. Defensively, this is a strong unit. I know that a couple weeks ago they had a bad game. They're currently ranked number 5, and they did give up some big plays last week, but they did have 2 INTs. They did stop the 2-point conversion to win the game in the end. This is a pretty strong, scrappy defensive unit. I have a feeling this is going to be a low-scoring game. I don't think it's going to be high-scoring. I think there's going to be 2 physical defenses going at it. Who's going to win this big rivalry? I think Pearl River does it, Mars. I think they break the 6-game losing streak to Nanuet. Nanuet is scrappy. They got a bunch of players that I like. But offensively, if they can't run the ball consistently, that's where bad things happen. If Pearl River can stop that, I think they have a good chance of winning. Their offense has been a little bit more consistent. I'm going to go with Pearl River on the road.
Yeah, I feel like this was definitely a tough game for me as well, but I feel like Pearl River is going to be my choice, mainly because I feel like they have a more balanced team. They have a very good defense, top defense in B based on points allowed, and their offense can move the ball, especially running the ball. They can move it very well, but I feel like they're pretty balanced, especially on offense. I mean, when it comes to the pass offense, they have the ability to make some big plays. I'm going to go with Pearl River here.
All right, 2 more B games left, and then we're going to go to A. And let's talk about this B crossover with the Hudson Valley Football League, and that's Croton Harmon, 2-4 at Peekskill, who's 4-2. This is a non-league game. And starting with Croton Harmon, offensively, it's kind of been a concern, right? I mean, the inconsistency at times, they can be very explosive. At times, they put up maybe 1 touchdown, right? So it's which offense is going to show up here. It really starts on that offensive line that at times has really moved people. And we know about their quarterback in Jones, their running back Reed. Can they get enough explosive plays against a Peekskill defense that has been tremendous? And I'll talk about them in a minute. And the best way you can do it is probably running downhill, because running towards the edges might be difficult. The play action game, the kind of counter action game, and running north and south, I think gives them the best chance versus Peekskill. Defensively, though, Croton Harmon has been very effective. They're number 7 in points allowed in B out of the 17 schools. And if you can prevent the big plays from Peekskill, which they have a lot of speed, they have a lot of athletes, I think they have a good chance in this one. Now, going to Peekskill offensively, last 2 weeks have been a struggle. They had a swing pass for a touchdown that ended up winning the game for them last week, but they scored, 8 points and 6 points? 8 and 6. Yeah, 8 and 6 these last 2 weeks. So it's kind of been a struggle to get the consistency on the offense. There's been multiple reasons, right? Mistakes that are killing drives and stuff like that. But defensively, 14 or less points each game this year, Mars, including 4 games of 6 or less points. This one, to me, is a very interesting one. I think it can go both ways. Peekskill at home with their defense playing at a very high level. But I'm going to go with Croton Harmon. I think the size up front, now Peekskill got some big boys, but I think they're going to run the ball downhill. I think they're going to shorten this game. It's going to be a low-scoring game. I think Croton Harmon might pull the upset off. I'm going to go with Croton Harmon.
Yeah, I feel like I'm also in a really tough spot for this game, because I feel like they are going to be pretty equal in a lot of different facets. But I feel like Peekskill has some momentum on their side. They're playing at home. Their offense can really make a lot of big plays. Their defense has been very good. And I feel like Peekskill, for me, has the ability to make this game a one-sided game if they are hitting on all cylinders. So I'm going to go with Peekskill here to win this game.
All right, guys. One last B game, and that is Rye 5-2 at Sleepy Hollow, who's 2-5. And starting with Rye, Mars, they're currently the 2nd-ranked team in B. Offensively, 35-plus points in 3 straight games. This offense is really starting to click. They're getting guys back, and you're starting to see that dynamic picture before the season started of what this offense can be. And it all starts with their quarterback in Miller, who has been tremendous this last week. Extremely efficient, knows where to go with the football, has got some weapons back. Him with Luliano, their running back, and his offensive line can create that balance that could be very deadly for teams to stop. And it was nice to see their wide receiver Griffiths back, who made some big plays for them last week. Then you got guys like Asiavati, Stevens, multiple guys there, tight end Kesner. You're starting to see a dynamic offense take shape. And against Sleepy Hollow, who has struggled to stop teams from scoring. So interested to see that. Defensively, this is the number 3 defense in points allowed, 14 or less points in 3 straight games. And this is, again, multiple guys. Now, that one's a little bit more hurt. They are missing some guys there defensively, but they have played pretty well. And guys like Kesner has made plays, Gonzalez, Wilmer. If they can stop the run, and mention some of those guys up there, I think Riley's going to have a good chance of winning this football game. When I look at Sleepy Hollow, it all starts with running the ball with Bowen. And they have some size up front, but defensively, they've allowed 40-plus points, Mars, 3 of the last 4 weeks. I think it's too much firepower. I'm going to go with Rye.
Yeah, I feel like I'm also going to go with Rye as well. I feel that they are getting healthier, that they have just more guys that on offense can make big plays. Their rush offense has been kind of getting better and better, and A.J. Miller is obviously A.J. Miller. He has the ability to make some big throws, and he's always been he's had some games this year that have been a little bit inconsistent, but when he is on, he is on. When he is efficient, he can really take over a game. So I feel like Rye has been hitting it in stride, so I'm going to go with Rye here.
All right, guys, those were the B games. Now we're going to head to A. And again, appreciate you guys as always. Again, if you haven't done so yet, if you're just coming in, make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe. If you have any questions, shoot them in the chat. Let me know who's representing here. We went through Hudson Valley Football League. We went through C and D schools, and now we've gone through B. Now we're going to do A. And this is going to be another very interesting week, the last regular season week for B, A, and AA. So let's continue, Mars. First one, I want to talk about one of the big rivalries, and that's Clarkstown South 2-4 at Clarkstown North, who's 1-5. This is a huge game for playoff implications, and obviously the big rivalry that we talked about. And let's start with Clarkstown South. And again, these projections, obviously Section 1 is going to give out the official ones, but these are just my projections based on looking at the different scenarios. And I hope I'm right. Maybe Chad can correct me if I'm wrong on some of the things I say. But for Clarkstown South, a win clinches the number 3 spot. Right, I think that one's pretty simple. You win here, you get the number 3 spot. A loss, but that's where things can get a little interesting. So let's just start with them. Winning is obviously the top priority to get the 3 spot. They're 16-5 versus Clarkstown North. They have won 2 straight. And now offensively, it's really the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde for this offense. When they're not turning the ball over, they're extremely explosive. And when they turn the ball over, it's really been a kneecap to them in some pivotal games. They have 2 40-plus point games, and then 3 games where they scored less than 20, right? So which offense are we going to see? And the turnovers, again, are a key factor to this one. And they have multiple guys who can make play. We know about Holder, who's a real big part of this offense because they do a lot of quick game and then some of the play action for the deeper stuff. So they put a lot on the quarterback who's got to be very smart with the ball. But Butler is someone who's been dynamic all season long, and he's going to be an important one running downhill versus Clarkstown North defense. And then a guy like Tito over the top, who's a good size wide receiver. So interested to see the battle up front as well with this offensive line. But defensively, 3 games they've allowed 14 or less points, and really 1 game where they lost, where they didn't give up an offensive touchdown. It was a kick return touchdown and defensive touchdown and stuff like that. So, there's multiple games that this defense has played at a high level. Stopping the run is going to be so important for Clarkstown South. And now looking at Clarkstown North, I mentioned that tie for the last spot in the playoffs, Mars. A win and a Pelham loss will actually clinch the number 3 spot for North and push South to the 4th spot, right? Because South is only 1 game ahead of North technically in league play, right? So if a win here and Pelham loses, they have the tiebreaker over Greeley. So even if Greeley wins, and they'll actually move them to the 3 spot because, again, the first tiebreaker that everyone is watching here is head-to-head. It's not over, then it's overall record. And in A, it's head-to-head then common opponents. So this is not just an overall record thing. So that's a really interesting dynamic there. And how can Clarkstown North Mars pull off the upset? To me, offensively, getting the ball to different guys against this Clarkstown South defense is going to be difficult running between the tackles. I think they have to use the play action. I think they have to get out on the edges. I think is their best opportunity. Guys like Calapi, Pompey, Biggio are guys who have made plays for this offense. This offensive line is really going to have to step up and match the physicality of Clarkstown South. Defensively, though, number 11 in points allowed, which makes me a little bit nervous. But Clarkstown South has shown that they can turn the ball over. So a guy like Barry, who's made some big plays in the secondary, if they can keep this game close and get some run game going, shorten the game, and force a couple turnovers, this game could turn, and Clarkstown North could get this victory. Now, can they do it? I don't believe it. I think Clarkstown South is going to win this game, Mars. I think, again, the offense is, you're not really sure what you're going to get, but if they can run the ball consistently, limit turnovers, I think Clarkstown South is going to win this game.
Yeah, I feel like this game, when you think of records and any of that stuff, it kind of just gets put to the side. This is a rivalry game in the end, and I feel like the fact that now we're adding playoff implications to it is only just going to make it more intense. But I feel like at the end of the day, Clarkstown South has been more consistent. They need to just limit the turnovers, and I feel like when they get their offense going, once they get on the rhythm, it's hard to stop them, right? I feel like they just need to stop with these turnovers, limit the mistakes. The Hogs need to win up front. I think Clarkstown South is going to win. I think this is a big deal for them to try to keep this train rolling, keep it going, get the momentum on their side going into the playoffs. I'm going Clarkstown South.
Let's go to the next game, Mars. We have Eastchester, who is 5-2, at Horace Greeley, who's 2-5. Eastchester has already clinched the number 2 spot, and offensively, I've at times they have been extremely impressive. Schultz, he's really their kind of the orchestrator that stirs the pot of this offense, and he was really good last week. 12-17, 190 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also had 2 rushing touchdowns. And he can feed the ball to different guys. McCloskey has kind of been a big one as a receiver for them. But I think they can run the ball. I think they can make some big plays against this Greeley defense. But what I've been most impressed on, and what can help Eastchester win some playoff games and compete defensively, Mars, they are tied for first in points allowed in A. They had a tough first half last week, but they really turned it up in the second half, only allowed 66 yards in the second half. This defense is dynamic, and they have playmakers at each level. I really like this Eastchester defense. And when I look at Greeley, Mars, they can still get in the playoffs too. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, a win and a Clarkstown North loss, they will clinch the number 4 seed in the South. So they have a huge opportunity here, but offensively, they have weapons. But boy, what has happened with this offense, Mars? 7 or less points in 3 straight games, and the big culprit, if you're watching their game, is turnovers. They have had some killer turnovers that have hurt them, and defensively is also last in A in points allowed. So this is going to be tough. They're really going to have to play up, but they're at home. You got to win one game. But I'm going to go with Eastchester. I think, again, their defense has just been too nasty. It's going to make it difficult for the offense. If the Greeley defense doesn't step up, I think Eastchester is going to hit some big plays. I'm going with Eastchester.
Yeah, I feel like Eastchester's defense is really going to be the one that kind of sets the tone here. I feel like that if they could slow down Greeley from, really cause Greeley to continue having issues, then I feel like this Eastchester offense is going to really have their way with the way this defense for Greeley has been playing. They really need to step it up, especially in the front 7, to really slow down Eastchester. And really, Schultz has been really impressive, been dominant. And I feel like if Eastchester can really force some turnovers for Greeley, get their offense in the field, I feel like they're going to win this game. I'm also going to go with Eastchester.
Let's go to the next A matchup. Mars Brewster 2-4 and Mayapack, who's 4-3. And boy, this is another really interesting one to me. Both struggling offenses. And let's start with Brewster. A win. First off, a win here gets you, right? So a win plus a Fox Lane win. Because again, they have a 4-way tie for the last 2 spots. So the number one thing is winning this game. And so Brewster has a chance to win this game, even though it's been a tough couple games. A win here plus a Fox Lane win, they're the number 3 seed in the North. A win plus a John Jay Cross River win, they'll be the number 4 seed. So what does that mean, Mars? A win gets you in, right? So you got to win this game. And when I look at offensively, this is been the big issue that Brewster has. They have scored less than 14 points in 4 straight games. And a big issue with that is the interceptions. They have 10 interceptions. And Brewster, obviously, the focus for them is running the ball. And it's been a very important thing. And I think getting back to running the ball, this offensive line has to step up. They're going up against a Mayapack defense that has size to it. So the offensive line has to step up, and getting the run game going with Barry and with their quarterback in Fox, who they like to run the ball, is going to be very important. And the quarterbacks they do multiple quarterbacks. They have to make some smart decisions, Mars. They can't turn the ball over. You turn the ball over at the rate that they're turning, it really puts their defense in a bind and really kind of changes the momentum of the game. But I have an issue with not even the Brewster offense. I have an issue with the Brewster defense, Mars, because remember big kudos I was giving them a couple weeks back. I feel like the struggles on offense has kind of bled into the defense. And I don't want to see the pointing going on, oh, the offense is this, the offense is that. A lot of these players play on the offensive side. They're playing both ways. And unfortunately, they have forced turnovers this year, but they have allowed 30-plus points in 2 straight and things that felt a little bit too easy. So when I'm looking at Brewster, I want to see this defense help the offense. I don't want to see you hang your head because the offense is struggling. Help your offense by getting a turnover, right? Forcing a team in a bad situation. So I'm looking at these guys have some playmakers. You got Lamaro, you got Bruce, Walker, Accurso, Carlson. Obviously, the big thing is slowing down Koch is going to be the number one focus. But how do they play guys like Carney on the outside? We've seen some teams do different things, and maybe that's some of the things that they can implement. But the defensive front seven's got to dominate and turn things around for this offense. So I'm interested to see if they could do it then. And now the pep talk for Mayapack, Morris. If they win and a Fox Lane win, they're the 4 seed. And if they win and John Jay Cross River wins on the other side, they're the number 3 seed. So again, a win and you're in. That's how that works. And offensively, listen, 2 of the last 3 games, they have not scored an offensive touchdown. They have their identity, which is giving the ball to Koch in many, a lot of different facets, and then throwing the ball down to Carney. Now, they haven't really executed getting the ball to other people, but Brewster has struggled at times defending the edge. And so getting Koch on the edge is probably going to be their top priority. What I say here on a Thursday night, the game plan's already in, but I'm assuming that's what they're going to attack. And then trying to get Carney in one-on-one matchups. But this offensive line, again, defending, blocking the edge, getting Koch out onto the edge, who's one of the most dynamic players in the league, and they're at home. Defensively, they have forced turnovers in each game this year, and now you're playing a Brewster team offensively that has turned the ball over a lot. Look for special teams, Mars. That's going to be another thing. Pinto, as a kicker, and a punter, has been huge for them. The kick return game has been huge. Listen, I think this game can go either way, but I'm going to go with Mayapack. They're at home. I think they've been the more consistent offense, and I think they should win this game. I thought they should win last week too, but I think they should win this game at home. They've been the more consistent team. I think they're overall the better team. Now, upsets obviously happen, but I'm going to go with Mayapack.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this game, it's the expectation. Mayapack, I feel like has more of a balanced team compared to what Brewster is giving you right now, and I feel like their offense has been more consistent. You have playmakers like Koch, like Carney, who have been very good all season long, and I feel like the fact that their special teams unit has been very good this entire season, whether it was blocking PATs or taking a kick return to the house. I mean, I still am surprised people are kicking the Koch at this point because he has just been owning people on the special teams unit. So. I mean, I feel like Mayapack's going to win this game, and I would be surprised if Brewster did pull off the upset, just because I feel like Mayapack has more of a balanced and more consistent team right now. So, but you know what? I said the same thing about Fox Lane. I said, hey, I don't know if Mayapack can lose, but they did. So at the end of the day, Mayapack, you got to prove me right. Brewster, you got to prove me wrong, whatever it's going to be. So, well, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. Let's go to the next game, Mars. We have Harrison, who is 5-2, at Pelham, who is 1-5. And Harrison has already won the league title. They have clinched the number 1 seed on their side. And offensively, to me, it's about building into the playoffs. And the consistency we saw, especially in the passing game, is going to be really important for Harrison if they want to make a run, right? Now, obviously, it starts with running the ball. I think that's their most important thing. The guys up front moving bodies and giving the ball to guys like Barcella and Krupe. But if their quarterback in Citro can throw like he did last week, now this offense really opens things up. He was 13 of 15 and 2 touchdowns, right? And getting the ball to guys like Krupe has kind of been a spark plug for this offense, and guys like McLaughlin. They need to learn to do that consistently, have show some of that balance. But it all starts with the run game, and I think that's the emphasis for this offense. Now, defensively, Mars, this is the number 3 defense in points allowed. This defensive front seven has a bunch of size to it. We got Beli Damaj, Santarelli, Nicolaj, and then the linebacking crew can really put a lot of pressure on you running the ball, and that's kind of the mindset. Force teams into second, third, and long, and now the secondary can make some plays like in Lanza and stuff like that. So I'm interested to see what Harrison does. I think, again, stopping the run is the priority, running the football. For Pelham, they also have an opportunity to get in. A win plus a Greeley lost at the number 4 seed. So, again, winning is the top priority, and then we'll see what everything else has. Offensively, I thought you saw some improvement. I've seen some improvement over the last couple of weeks. Massarelli had a huge game last week, 180 yards. They're going to have to throw the ball and get out on the edge. That's going to be the big thing. Running in between the tackles is going to be very tough against Harrison. Defensively is where they've been a little bit more consistent. I just don't see the upset happen, unfortunately. Harrison's playing at a high level, especially defensively. They really can get after you and kind of squeeze you. And now, if they can run the ball, I think Harrison's going to win this game.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Harrison. I feel like they've just been a very complete team all season long. They've had really a few mistakes that have set them back, but they've been very consistent for the most part. And I feel like this offense is really going to carry the load, but the defense has just been lights out. So I'm also going to go with Harrison here.
Let's talk about probably the game of the week for the entire section, and that's Somers 6-1 at Yorktown, who is 7-0. The winner of this game gets the number 1 seed. The loser gets the number 2 seed in their division. Let's start with Somers. Offensively, Mars, the number 2 offense in points scored in A. They have 5 30-plus point games. This has been a dynamic offense. And again, it starts with their quarterback in Sullivan. He's made the transition from wide receiver to quarterback from last year to this year. And I know in the beginning it was a little bit rough, but boy, he has been extremely consistent. And he has been lights out these last couple of weeks. Throwing the ball, and they use him as a runner. He's a big boy. He's like 6'4", Morrison. So I'm expecting to see a heavy dose of Sullivan in this one, both throwing and running the ball. And it's really on this offensive line handling the pressures of Yorktown. Now, Yorktown is not huge, right? So Somers is going to have a size advantage, but they can move. And they like to bring their linebackers and like to cause a lot of mayhem. So I'm interested to see if Somers can run the ball with Kelly. But I think a lot of it's going to be, hey, if you're going to bring pressure, we're going to use the quick game, the outside game, to guys like Palazzolo, their wide receiver, who has been very dynamic. They're going to put him in the slot. I'm interested to see how Yorktown kind of plays them. Are they going to bracket that side? Or are they going to play man coverage? You better get to the quarterback if you're going to play man coverage on him. So interested in that. But other guys like Kapika and Conti have also made plays in this offense. I'm expecting them to use kind of the quick game and the pass attack to kind of act as an extension of the run. But I'm interested to see if they kind of run downhill in the beginning to try to open up this defense a little bit to see if they'll get some loaded boxes and create some man-to-man coverage for Somers. Defensively, number 4 in points allowed in A, and it starts with that front seven. It makes it very difficult to run the ball. And guys like Kreco and Cole and Newman, they can really get after you running the ball. So I'm interested to see, again, Somers does put their DBs out on the island at times against these wide receivers of Yorktown. I'm interested to see if they do that, or are they going to play off and kind of see if their front 4 can dominate without bringing those pressures, right? So interested to see how they work that. But I do think stopping the run and creating pressure on the quarterback and Gonzalez, that's where the turnovers tend to happen. Guys like Iglesias, Balancia making plays in that secondary. This one to me is going to be so interesting. I want to go to Yorktown, Mars. I said Somers was number 2 in offense. Yorktown is number 1 in offense. So the 2 top offenses going at it in points scored. And I mentioned it earlier. How does Yorktown's offensive line handle the size and strength of Somers' front 7? Right? This is going to be an absolute slugfest here. And I think it's going to be difficult to run the ball, but they got to keep this defense somewhat honest, running the ball with guys with Delvecchio and Constantine. I do think, again, passing the ball at times when Somers like to play press man, like to play some cover 3, and you got to take advantage of them being aggressive in the secondary against some of these wide receivers and Costello and stuff. So interesting to see. Gonzalez has 17 touchdown passes, over 1,000 yards passing. Has to be smart and not turn the ball over. Sometimes they like to get very aggressive, Mars, and that's where the turnovers can fly. Defensively, again, I mentioned Eastchester. They were tied with Eastchester for points allowed. Mars, 7 or less points in 4 straight games. They love to force negative plays, bringing their linebackers, and that's like a guy, Ryan Vogel. To me, I'm interested to see how they play Palazzolo. Could they go one route as in trying to get after the quarterback and playing man coverage, or do they try to bracket? So I'm interested to see, again, try to take away some of the quick stuff, don't give up the quick stuff, or do they play true to their word? They're bringing the blitz, try to stop the blitz, and let's make some plays and cause some negative plays. Listen, I'm going to say this. I said a couple weeks ago, I think these 2 teams playing in the championship game, that was my pick. A while back, right, Mars? I mean, I was asked that question in the chat, and that's what I said it's going to be. Somers is, again, they're tied for first in Class A. They have to go on the road to Yorktown. And my only concern here for Yorktown is, are they ready for this kind of moment? Somers has been here and done that. Yorktown has had strong years. They have a strong history, but are they ready for this kind of moment? Does the pressure And does that moment appear a little bit too big for them? I know I'm crazy, but I think that the upset happens this week more. So I think Yorktown, and again, it's not the, again, I think they'll end up playing each other in the championship, which might be a different type of game. But for this week, on the road, Yorktown at home, I think they live up to the moment and they win the game and pull the upset. I'm going Yorktown.
This is a tough one to really call because of the fact that, these teams are very well matched up. I feel like you have this very strong Yorktown offensive line against a very good Somers front, and they both kind of complement each other in a way where it's going to be like a battle of the Titans in a way. And I feel like when you look at the battles and how many times teams like Yorktown and Somers have had these big time games, I think Somers has had the advantage of that. And that's why I'm going to go with Somers. I feel like their front seven is going to really give a lot of problems for Yorktown. Now, like I said before, and you just said it, I think that Yorktown and Somers were more than likely to meet again later on. And who knows what happens the second time around. But I feel like Somers, I think, has momentum on their side. Their offense has been dominant. Their defense has been dominant. And so is Yorktown. But I just feel like the big time games like this, Somers is going to kind of find a way to get the advantage, take the lead, and then drain that clock like they've done in the past. So I feel like Somers is going to win this game.
It is so important for Yorktown to get off to a fast start. If they get behind on Somers, that's where bad things I think could happen. I may be crazy. You got Somers. I know Lowhead picked Somers. Maybe I'm crazy, but I just have that weird feeling. Let's go to the final A matchup, and this is another huge, colossal game, and that's Fox Lane 3-3 at John Jay Cross River, who's 2-4. When you look at Fox Lane, Marshall, a win plus a Brewster win, they're the number 4 seed. A win plus a Mayapack win, I think they're the number 3 seed. So offensively, listen, they had a huge upset victory last week. They had a great drive at the end to win the touchdown, but overall, we know the offense has been inconsistent. And I think the key thing for them is to use some of their size and downhill running to run the ball and limit turnovers is going to be big. They had a fumble last week in an INT. Now, unfortunately, defensively, it didn't hurt them. But you can't do that in big games, especially tight games, because that will kill you. And so they have to limit the turnovers. They got to run the ball, in my opinion, because John Jay Cross River's secondary is pretty solid. Defensively, I think they have a size advantage here. They have to generate pressure on Cross River's quarterback and limit those big plays by some of the stud receivers. Now, I know offensively they've been pretty consistent, but defensively, Mars, they're number 5 in points allowed in A. So this has been a strong defensive unit. When I look at John Jay, again, they can also get in. A win plus a Brewster win, they're the 3 seed. A win plus a Mayapack win, they're the 4 seed. So offensively, they're number 12 in points, right? So the consistency hasn't. I know they got some young guys, got some inexperienced guys. It's a little bit smaller on the offensive line. They got to get the ball out quickly, right? I don't think running the ball is going to be too easy against this Fox Lane defense, but they can do the quick game, which can act as an extension and then take some deep shots. Defensively, they could slow down Fox Lane's pass attack, force them to throw the ball. Guys like Arfige, Russo coming off the edge, I think they can force some turnovers. So I'm interested to see what happens in this game. This one, again, is a tough one because John Jay Cross River at home is not easy to beat. But I think Fox Lane's going to do it. I think their consistency defensively, even though I like Cross River's defense at times, have played pretty strong. But both these offenses have struggled. I think Fox Lane will be able to run the ball, which I think is going to be the big key factor. I'm going Fox Lane.
Yeah, I feel like that was definitely a big win for them to win that game against Mayapack. And I feel like they're kind of now in the fields. They're kind of in that momentum where they're like getting the mojo. And their defense has been consistent all year. The question is now going to be, can the offense really not fumble or not turn the ball over to get them on these solid drives? I'm also going to agree with you. I think Fox Lane, this is a big moment for them. I'm picking them to win this game mainly because they know what's at stake. They win the game they're in, and they could be a 3rd seed, which is a great position to be in for the playoffs. And I feel like Fox Lane realizes their defense is going to be the key cog to this, and their offense just needs to limit the turnovers, and I think they could do it.
All right, that was A, guys. Appreciate it as always. We're going to get to double A now, but if you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Let us know in the chat who's representing here. If you have any questions, shoot it in there as well. We're out to the final leg of the race, so let's keep going, Mars. Double A, North Rockland 5-2 at Carmel, who's 5-1. And again, let's start with North Rockland. Currently the number 3 seed in the league. But let me just tell you about some of the weird stuff that could happen in this game. So a win and they're automatically, right? So if they can win this game, they're locked in at the 3 spot. But a loss is pretty big as well. If they lose this game, plus Mamaroneck wins, and Ossining loses, they'll be the 4th seed. But if they lose this game and Ossining and Mamaroneck win, I think the math says they're out. So again, you're talking about a 5-2 team that go 5-3 and end up not making the playoffs because they lost to Ossining. And again, if you look at AA, the number one tiebreaker is head-to-head before overall record. So this is a huge moment for them. And offensively, we know they really got to attack the outside. It's tough to run in between the tackles against Carmel because of the size and physicality that they play with. They're going to have to go a lot of off tackle, a lot of counter stuff, a lot of sweeps, even some maybe quick game to act as an extension of the run. But they got to get the ball to Savor, who has over 600 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns. But they have other guys, Vasquez, Johnson, who made some big plays for them last week. What has to happen is they cannot turn the ball over. Now, they had, I think, one turnover last week, which was a fumble, but they can't throw interceptions. So big thing for Hamilton, the quarterback, they have a big play threat in Farrar. If they can run the ball with some relative consistency outside the tackle box, there will be some opportunities because of the aggressiveness of Carmel. There might be some opportunities to hit some big plays in the passing game, but they cannot turn the ball over. Defensively, this is a defense that's number 5 in points allowed, and stopping the run obviously is going to be the number one priority. Can they match the physicality and size of Carmel up front? Guys like Vade and Harrison are going to have to play huge in this one. This defense has forced 14 turnovers, so some turnovers would definitely help in their path to try to pull the upset. And when I look at Carmel, they're at home. They have already locked up the league title and have the number 1 seed on this side, Mars. Offensively, we know running the ball is the top priority. Using the size and strength of those big offensive linemen who have just been mauling dudes this season and giving the ball to Worley and Venables has been huge. But the pass attack really woke up last week. Nunez, he was 9-14, 153 yards and 3 touchdowns. They'd have an INT. You saw guys like Santiago and Abel making some big plays in the passing game. Defensively, they've allowed 7 or less points 3 out of the last 4 weeks. Again, in that front 7, if they can slow down North Rockland's rush attack, forcing their quarterback to throw the ball. Once they create a negative play, now these outside pressures can come, right? Now they can run the smokes from the outside. They occasionally do some inside linebacker stunt. But getting that negative play, that's going to be the big thing for Carmel. If they can do that and force them into a passing team, that's not what North Rockland wants to do. So that's going to be the big one. This one I know sounds crazy. I think Carmel is the better football team. They are home, but they have locked up the league title, Mars, and the number 1 seed. I think you're going to see a very desperate North Rockland team. I think you're going to see a very desperate North Rockland team, and I think North Rockland is going to do the upset. And again, not saying that Carmel is not I think Carmel is the better team. I think they play great defensively and run the ball. I think this will be low scoring. Carmel's already locked their spot in. I think North Rockland might pull the upset here. I'm going to go with North Rockland.
Yes, you know what? I feel like I'm going to go with Carmel. I know that the fact that they have already locked the playoff spot, but I feel at the end of the day, a lot like what Carmel kids and I think the coaching staff are going to look for is really to keep the momentum going, especially after a really beginning of the season that was very all over the place, and a lot of people didn't know whether or not they would be able to really keep going as Carmel has always done the past few years actually. But the offensive line has been carrying the team. They've been dominant. I feel like they're gonna need to keep pushing to really get that momentum going into the playoffs, because that's really going to be crunch time. And I do agree North Rockland will have that very desperate, really give everything they have moment. But I feel like Carmel just has too much, and I'm going to go with Carmel here.
I see it good. We got Ossining just might surprise this section. We'll get to Ossining. They have a great opportunity to try to sneak into the playoffs here. But let's talk about the next game, and that's Yonkers Forest 3-4 at Mamaroneck, who's 4-2. And I gave a shout out to Mamaroneck as one of my teams of the week from last week. And Yonkers Forest, I know they're out of the playoffs, but they really competed last week against Carmel. Offensively, throwing the ball with Fields, who had 2 touchdowns. We know about Aquino, who had over 100 yards, and a kick return touchdown. And Testamark is someone to keep an eye on. He's made some plays for this team the last couple weeks. I do think they're going to find some explosives. They're going to have to throw the ball. I think running the ball is going to be kind of difficult. But defensively, can they stop the run? It's been a real struggle for them these last few weeks. And when I look at Mamaroneck, a win plus a North Rockland loss, they could be the number 2 seed because John Jay is playing a non-league game. So a win plus a North Rockland loss, they could be the 2 seed. A win plus a North Rockland win. What does that do exactly? I think that puts them that's going to be a 3-way tie, I think. So that's going to be interesting there. Then it's going to go over overall record. and then then points allowed. So interested to see. I got to do the numbers on that one on who the overall record is if they all win. But offensively, this is number 4 offense and points scored. I thought Mackey really came back last week and had a really strong game after I thought he struggled versus Carmel. 8 of 10 passing, 120 yards and a touchdown, but 55 yards rushing. And they found some weapons in the passing game in Smeal, Davidson. But running the ball, I think, is going to be a big one for this team this week. And this offensive line, I think, has an opportunity to really establish itself and open up holes. Defensively, they've allowed 14 or less 3 of the last 4 games. They're led the way by their linebacking core, TJ Smith. But this secondary is what's really going to be tested. Amerenik at home, I think it's too much for Yonkers Forest. I think they run the ball. I'm going with Amerenik.
Yeah, I'm also going to agree. I feel like Amerenik's defense is really what's going to be the one that sets the tone for this game. I feel like they're going to own the line of scrimmage. The fact that they're at home, they need to win this game to get a better seed. I'm going Mammo.
Scarsdale 4-2 at Mount Vernon, who's 2-4. This is a big league game right here. I know Scarsdale. They put me in a nice little video there on me being wrong on a pick in their game. So a little shout out to them in their promo video. But looking at Scarsdale, I tell you what, I think they've had an impressive year, and the coaches and kids deserve a lot of credit. Currently, they're tied in the 3rd spot with New Rochelle, who they did lose to, and a win here and a Suffern loss, plus a New Rochelle win is going to be another 3-way tie, right? So a win, I think they've already guaranteed their spot in the playoffs, but now it's going to be on what seeding that is. So getting a win here would be huge. But I do think they could get the number 2 spot if that occurs. So if they win and Suffern loses and North Rockland wins, I think win percentage, I think they have the advantage. But offensively, listen, they're not a high-powered offense. The focus is on the option, running the football. Guys like Gilligan and Knopp are going to be the huge one. Their quarterback limiting turnovers is big, really important. But the key to this team is their defense. Number 2 in points allowed in AA Mars. This is a defense that limits big plays. They really get after it. They force some turnovers. And if they can limit the big plays from Mount Vernon, I think this defense can have a lot of success. Mount Vernon's got size and they can get out on the edge. My concern is defensively stopping the run. And if Scarsdale can limit the big plays, I think Scarsdale's going to win this game on the road. I'm going Scarsdale.
Yeah, I think Scarsdale is really going to have to step into their own. The defense is going to have to really bring it here and they have to own the front. I feel like once their offense gets a lot more opportunities, they're going to get some points. I'm also going to go with Scarsdale here to try to boost their seeding. And I feel like this is going to be a big game for them.
All right, 4 games left. Morris Arlington 7-0 at Suffern, who's 4-2. Huge league game, and this is actually for the league title. I know Arlington 7 wins, Suffern has 2 losses, but league play is the big one, right? So they're only 1 game separating them in league play. If Arlington wins, they're the number 1 seed. If they lose, they're the number 2 seed. And when I look at Arlington offensively, number 1 team in points scored in AA. They've scored 30-plus points in each game this year. Now, I didn't see their quarterback, Resigno, who's such a huge part of this offense, play last week, and Feldman stepped in and did a very good job for this offense overall. So interested to see that situation, but this offensive line has just been bulldozing people and moving dudes, and they have 3 players with over 200 yards rushing in Davenport, Resigno, and even DeGusto. So I think running the ball is going to be key. They're playing against a very tough Suffern defense, and the play action can open things up. But Suffern has struggled to tackle the ball a little bit, so you got to keep hammering it away on them. Defensively, they've had multiple guys make big plays for this defense. McGann, Real Muto, Finn, Lavello, who has also 3 INTs. This defense has forced 13 turnovers. If they can slow down Suffern's rush attack, force them into passing the ball, I could see a couple turnovers here. Even Tuttle has had a couple INTs. Now, Suffern, they had clinched a playoff spot, but they did lose to Scarsdale. So, again, if they win the number 1 seed, if they lose and Scarsdale wins, I think they get to the number 3. Offensively, what's kind of happened to this offense has been a big mystery. 2 out of the last 3 weeks, Mars 7 or less points scored. And this is going to be really important for this offensive line to try to establish the run game with Jeb Joseph. And they got to get some sort of play action game going out of the pass game and limit the mistakes, the penalties, and the turnovers. Defensively, this is the number 1 defense in points allowed in AA, Mars. So this is a defense that's really gone after it, but tackling has been an issue these last couple weeks. So, to me, it's unfortunate. So if Resigno does play, they got to keep him in the pocket. That's going to be an extremely important aspect of it. So if Resigno plays, keeping him in the pocket, but limiting the run and tackling better is going to be huge. This is a tough one. Suffern is at home, but I am going to go with Arlington, Mars. I just think there's too much firepower here, and Suffern's offense just doesn't have enough to keep up with it.
Yeah, I feel like Arlington's going to win this one mainly because the offensive line has really been dominant, and I feel like they've been pushing people around. I know Suffering has really good defense, but I feel like the key thing is going to be that Arlington has momentum. Their offense has been dominant, and no matter what happens, I know that their rush offense is really going to be pushing people around and creating lanes, and I feel like with that, the play action pass is going to open up big time. So I'm going to go with Arlington as well.
So I don't know if this is just breaking news, but NYC Micah just told me Scarsdale versus Mount Vernon is a forfeit because of a fight last week. 28 players suspended.
28 players suspended.
I don't even know.
Was it the entire team, the entire program?
So that's pretty sad.
That's horrible.
So that's awful to hear.
That sucks,
again, that's the win right there, right, for Scarsdale, and unfortunately for Mount Vernon. You always hate seeing that. So, again, don't have clarity on it, but just going off of chat. Appreciate you sharing that info. Let's talk about John Jay's Fishkill 5-2 at RCK is 1-5. This is a non-league game, but a big rivalry. John Jay has clinched the playoff spot, but again, the question is seeding, right? Because Mamaroneck beat them last week, we're going to see what happens to them there. It could be the number 2 or the number 3 spot. And I'm looking offensively for them to bounce back this week. Quarterback Feliciano, Rossi, that kind of duo right there. This is the number 2 offense in points scored. They had some big mistakes last week, whether it's, again, turnovers, drive-killing mistakes. So I'm looking to see this offense rebound and score some points in this one. Defensively, they're number 4 in points allowed, 13-4 versus RCK. They have won 7 straight. Look at RCK. Defensively, just got to limit the big plays and force. You see, if you play aggressively and force them to dink and dunk on you, maybe you can force a turnover here, right? You're at home. Offensively, they got to be able to run the ball. That's key for RCK. This offensive line, it's got to try to move some guys up front. There's not going to be a big size advantage here. So RCK, can they get some run game going? This one's a tough one for me because RCK is at home. It's a big rivalry game. John Jay's already clinched it. But again, I'm looking for John Jay to bounce back from last week. So to me, I feel like this got to be a statement game. I'm going John Jay.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with John Jay. I mean, I know that they clinched, but I feel like it's a rivalry game. You want all your guys to show out. The seniors really want to show out here, and I feel like the offensive line needs to really step it up big time. And I feel like because it's a rivalry game, I don't think it even matters at home or away. I feel like John Jay's Fishkill is going to win this game. It's just because they're going to be so amped getting ready for this playoff matchups that I feel like the rivalry game is really just going to get them going. I'm going with John Jay's Fishkill.
Ossining 3-4 at White Plains, 2-0-6. This is a big league game. Ossining marched with a win plus a Mamaroneck win and a North Rockland loss. They have the head-to-head versus North Rockland. I think they sneak in at the number 4 spot. So they have a chance here to put themselves in position to make the playoffs. And offensively, it really starts with his offensive line and the running game. And Anthony LaFaro marched over 500 yards rushing the last 2 games. Gio Pierre is another one who's made some plays running the ball. That dynamic duo, especially LaFaro, has kind of been a bell cow. They've given the ball like 30-plus times. So that's kind of been the big thing. They're not a big passing offense, so running the ball is going to be extremely important. And defensively, I really like the way they played the last 2 weeks. They have been getting after the ball. Now, White Plains could play spoiler at home. I like some of the way that their defense has played the last couple weeks. But this Ossining run game has been very potent, and I think they're going to play with so much on the line. I'm going Ossining.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Ossining. And based on my predictions with Carmel winning and Ossining winning, that means Ossining sneaks in. Where isn't it? Or is it one more team? As the Mamo has to also win for that to happen?
I think Mamaroneck has to win. If they don't win, it's a 3-way tie, and then I think you go to the next spot, which is overall record.
So based on my predictions, it means Ossining is making it into the playoffs. I think Ossining is going to win. The rush offense is going to really step it up. Their old line is going to move some bodies around, and like you said before, the drive to win is going to get them to push to get this W here. So I'm going to go with Ossining.
Let's go to the last one. Mars, New Rochelle 3-4 at Yonkers Bray, who's 0-7. Looking at New Rochelle, a win here plus a suffer loss is that 3-way tie, and now we go to the better record. I do think they slot in at the number 4 slot. But offensively, Mars, offense has woken up a little bit. 20-plus points in 3 straight games. We've seen Allen, Braden Davis, Dawson James. They're starting to make some plays, and obviously the big thing for them is getting out on the edge. That's going to be the big thing. So I think that's going to be the number one thing for Yonkers and for New Rochelle. Yonkers Brave, they're last in points allowed in AA, so look for the big plays to go on for New Rochelle. Defensively, though, you want to see this defense really get back on track. Too many 20-plus point games for defense, which is pretty surprising for a New Rochelle defense. But I do think New Rochelle goes on the road and wins this game. I'm going with New Rochelle.
Yeah, I feel like New Rochelle is going to win as well. I feel like their offense is going to start clicking. They're going to get some outside big plays. Defense is going to really step it up. I feel like this is going to be more of a complete win, and you got to give New Rochelle credit. I think they're going to have a good win as an entire unit. Their offensive lines are going to really step it up here. I'm going to go with New Rochelle.
All right, that was all the games, guys. I do see one final question. Thoughts on the Fox Lane offensive line? And this is what I'm going to say. I really like Bailey. I know he is a big-bodied kid there, and you have some scrappy other guys up on the offensive line. At times, his offensive line has moved people and stayed on blocks, and at times I've seen them have some bad penalties. I've seen some at times not stay on blocks. So, to me, when Fox Lane's offense can get going is when they can run the ball. So there's a big onus on this offensive line. And I do think that's going to help them carry, especially in this game against probably a smaller front in John Jay, but they like to bring a lot of heat with their linebackers. So it's going to be huge for this Fox Lane offensive line. Mars, quick thoughts before we close it out.
The offensive line needs to really step it up. I feel like they have some size, they have some strength, but I feel like they have to come together as a unit. The Hogs up front needs to own this offense, own the line of scrimmage to really bring this game home, to bring this rush offense going. And I feel like if they could do that, then they could be a very, very solid, very good offensive line for the rest of this playoff season.
Yep. And that will do it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, just some quick news. I am going to be traveling next week, so we might not have a live show. I might do a recording, or I might just put out my game picks, unfortunately. Going to travel to see some family, so will not be around next week. But we'll see. I'm going to try my best to do what I can, but I do plan on doing the recap for our Patreon members, but we might just posting the picks next week. So let's see what happens. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I hope good luck to all the teams this weekend. Hope you all have a great football weekend, and we'll see you all soon.